Welcome to the All Access Entertainment Podcast. I am your host, Joseph Bruen, here this week with a special guest requested specifically by the fans, none other than Mr. Joe Dombrowski. Joe, thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate the platform, and I appreciate learning that I apparently have fans. So we're already dropping big news here right off the bat. I love it.
Yes, absolutely. I put out the feelers, who would you like to see next? And your name came up several times. So I said, let's do it. Let's get you on, and I've followed your work, throughout. So familiar with you and looking forward to this.
Yeah, not often I get a chance to do this with my schedule and whatnot, but this felt like a good destination to go out of my way to be, and I know you're going to take good care of me. So let's have some fun.
Absolutely. Appreciate that. So, let's rewind to the very beginning, growing up as a fan. When did you first discover pro wrestling? Who were some of your favorites growing up?
My earliest memory, and I can't explain why this stuck with me or why it drew me in, but the earliest cognizant memory I can think of is an interview segment with Gene Okerlund and Andre the Giant and Bobby Heenan, and this was after Andre had left Bobby and he'd done his own thing. This would have been, I believe, I was able to find the date on this, and it was like April of 1991, something like that. Bobby was going in for the handshake, and Andre, of course, acquiesced and just started squeezing the crap out of Bobby's hand, and Bobby's on all fours, and he's selling the hell out of it, and that's my memory, and I don't know what drew me in from that specifically, and except just how over the top it was, just how well produced it was, just how hammed up wrestling was at the time, but. From there, I keep watching, and you see the bright lights and the big colors, and the WWF in 1991 was tailor-made for my age demographic. I was 5 years old at the time, so how do you find something like that and you're not enthralled with it? As far as favorites go, I don't know. I always had a bad seed in me because I always preferred the heels. I was probably one of the few kids, especially in the Northeast, that was more of a Flair kid than a Hogan kid. When Flair came over, I loved Bobby Heenan. I loved Ted DiBiase. Jake the Snake Roberts when he was doing his deal with Warrior and Savage at the time. I don't know. I don't want to come out here and sound like that I was some elitist at 5 years old. It's like, oh, well, I figured out the Hogan formula right away. But it's just, I just remember, like, I got it. Like, I saw Hogan kick out of, like, the earthquake splash. And I'm like, all right, so nobody can beat him.
Yeah.
Like, there was no drama there for me,
Exactly.
That's how my brain went. Instead of him being my superhero, it's like, oh, well, I know what happens. I can just move on to somebody else.
And you'd go on to be a part of the wrestling business on multi levels over the years. At what point did you decide this is something that I want to give a shot? I want to try it out. And, how did you go about doing so?
I have to assume that as soon as I figured out there was a way, I wanted to do it. I didn't really know what independent wrestling was when I was a kid. I had gone to one independent show when I was 8. But I really didn't understand like who these people were, and there was a whole scene, and there was a regularly touring, outfits and talents out there. My first real legitimate exposure to independent wrestling was in the late 90s boom when every independent wrestling company found its way on TV because it was guaranteed ratings. And there was a block of programming on Saturday nights, WPTT 22, and it started at 11 p.m. and it was the ECW syndicated show, and then it was WWF Shotgun Saturday Night, and then at 1 a.m. it was something called Pro Wrestling Express, which I never heard of, wasn't familiar with, and turns out that that was one of several local Pittsburgh companies, probably the best produced from a television standpoint at the time. But, there were a few names there that I recognized, like Samu would come in and out, and maybe some guys I'd seen do like some enhancement work on the WWF or WCW. And obviously it was a lot more low budget. But to me, it's on the same TV station as WWF and ECW. This has to be a big deal, right?
Yeah.
And then, wow, they're running shows right down in, McKeesport, North for Sales, which is like 40 minutes from me. So all of a sudden, this became within reach. It became attainable. And I thought to myself, I don't know how, but that's my way in. And I was close. Fast forward 5 years, I hear an ad on the radio for another local wrestling company, IWC, International Wrestling Cartel. 2002, they are promoting a main event of Jerry Lawler versus Kamala. And even as a kid, again, one of my weird quirks, living in Pittsburgh, somehow I'm a Memphis wrestling fan because I got a hold of the tapes. So Lawler and Kamala was a big appeal to me, and like Balls Mahoney was there, and a little Guido, and York and Matthews. So it was a star-studded affair. Future stars I didn't know of yet, like Colt Cabana, Chris Hero. I was sucked in, had to go, and it really, really. I mean, it always had me, but it sunk in even deeper there to be in the second row and be able to interact with them or slap their hands or curse them out or whatever. And it's just the whole experience. I fell in love with on a whole new level. I'm like, all right, this is it. How? When? Yeah. It took me 4 months to figure it out. I had a little, cheapo free website. I would write my little blogs in, and I'd talk to the talent, and I just kind of immersed myself into the community. And then 4 months later, my Spanish class needed money for a fundraiser. Hey, I know a great fundraising opportunity that can involve the community and give live entertainment. And I basically middleman the agreement with the promoter, Norm Connors, and my Spanish teacher and the principal and the school board, and help navigate that red tape. So my first official job was basically co-promoting an event at my high school when I was 17. And that opened the door for me to do commentary on that show. I don't remember if it was my idea or if it was the promoters to be in that specific role. I knew I couldn't do anything in the confines of a match because I was underage, and the athletic commission may have had an issue with that. But yeah, that was my first taste of actually working in the business, and on commentary that night. I don't mind saying I was dreadfully awful. We could play it now, and I'll just sit here and cringe for 2 hours. But it was a foot in the door, and I started writing for the website, and I started doing commentary gigs here and there when somebody wasn't available, and was consistent. Showed them I wanted it, and 7 months after that, there was a point where none of the regular announcers were available. I got slotted in to be the lead guy the whole show, and probably pretty rough in retrospect, but Norm saw something there where he was very impressed with it, and kept me at that chair permanently after that. And when I'm available, when I'm in town, that's still my chair. So it's still home to me, and I'm very grateful that it was the beginning of all of the weird stuff I've been able to do in the 23 years since. This is my 23-year anniversary in the business, by the way. I don't know if you're aware.
Congratulations. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you. Can't get rid of me.
Well, there's no intention to get rid of you. You're doing such a good job and doing so many things, so This is what we want to talk about. We're going to bounce around a little bit, but let's kind of get into the merchandising end of things. Obviously, you've been a big part of merchandising throughout your career. I'm a big fan and supporter of physical media, as you are. You create lots of content and preserve lots of footage. Why don't we talk about the DVD end of things? Obviously, DVDs are kind of going by the wayside, and I've always been one that's still promoting them, still trying to keep it alive, and you're doing the same. Let's hear all about it and your involvement.
I think DVDs are going to make a comeback. I think they'll be like vinyl. Maybe never to the degree that they were 20 years ago. Um, but I think you're going to see more and more of a pushback against streaming because you've got so many different avenues, so many different companies you have to subscribe to who can give and take and edit at a whim. And there's just something special about being able to own something outright, to physically have it, to touch it, to read the box, that doesn't exist in the streaming age. But obviously, physical media was a huge part of my life as a kid, VHS and later DVD, and it helped turn me on to what the territories were. It helped turn me on to what wrestling was like in the 70s and the 80s, and really helped round out how I viewed the business, and I wasn't just a WWF kid. Like, oh, here, look, there's the Sheik stabbing Mark Lewin. What's this about? Um, and I've always been a guy who recognizes my strengths and my weaknesses. Um, I knew wrestling is where I wanted to be and where I felt like I belonged, so I also knew I had to make it work for me because I'm not going to be the guy on the top of your poster getting $2,000 to come in and sign autographs. Not going to be me. I'm not a draw. I get it. I'm ancillary staff. So my ceiling may be somewhat limited as far as what I could do as a one-trick pony. I got to diversify. I got to learn how to ring announce and book and produce and merchandise and all this other stuff. So there's just more avenues and potential revenue streams open for me. And that's one of the things I did when I was booking up in Cleveland with PWO and Prime Wrestling. I wore 10 different hats. As anybody who's run an event will know, you're normally, overworking yourself and doing the job of about 10 or 12 people. And in 2011 or 2012, I inherited, which is code for the other guy didn't want to do it. I inherited the shipping and distribution of our DVDs. So I got a crash course of um, sending out our events and our pay-per-views and producing them in-house and getting the covers right, getting the labels right, and kind of trial and error and experimenting with that. And I had a good system down. And then one day I started thinking to myself, I was watching Wrestling with Shadows, and I was watching it differently than I did it as a kid. I was watching it from a production standpoint, how they presented the narrative, how they told their story. And I just remember thinking back, like, oh, I know a few friends of mine have talked about how they think Montreal was a work and Brett was in on it and everybody made money from it. And it was this big conspiracy. And I thought, like, man, somebody should make a DVD about that at some point. Wait a minute, I can make a DVD about that. So that got the ball rolling. And then that was a big success, and it opened the door for me to do, work with Jimmy Corderas and AJ Styles and Virgil and all these different characters, Zach Gowen, that I had all these ideas for of how to present their story and how to utilize their knowledge. Um, and it just built into something more. And it built into what is ProWrestlingLibrary.com now. And as time went on, my DVD sales dropped year over year. My digital sales grew year over year, much like any media company, big or small, until I released the Brian Pillman Memorial Show set. And that was a big turning point. And that was something that you got to recognize had never had an official mainstream widespread release. Tape traders could find it. You could find copies of copies of copies, but there was no official release unless you found it on like a merch table in Cincinnati somewhere. Because Melanie Pillman, the widow, had retained the rights. And she, understandably, was not a fan of the business. and had her own personal issues that have been documented elsewhere. Um, but I was already working with Les Thatcher on the Wrestling with the Heartland set. Brian Pillman Jr. gets into the business. I tell Brian, talk to your mom. I'll talk to Les. Let's make some money. And we put this thing out, and sales exploded. I could not keep up with it for a solid 3 to 5 weeks. And that's where I realized where the sweet spot of physical media lies. I can't sell a DVD to a 12-year-old. They probably don't even know what it is, let alone want to watch it.
Right.
But I can sell it to a 45-year-old. I can sell it to somebody who grew up watching Ric Flair, Harley Race, the Von Erichs, Andre the Giant, and like, here's all their best stuff that you've probably never seen because it was never on mainstream TV. And it just grew from there, and that's really a sweet spot that people have embraced, and that people have really gone out of their way to support. And since then, I've been making relationships with former promoters and content owners, and you know, descendants of wrestling royalty, and just building these connections where, all right, maybe you know what you have, maybe you don't, but I can make you some money, and I can give a spotlight to what your family did, or what you own, and introduce it to a whole new audience, because WWE's not doing DVDs anymore. I think maybe AEW is doing it very limitedly. Um, Best Buy, Target, Walmart, they're all phasing the stuff out, but there's still a market for it, and I'm gonna find it. And as long as there's people willing to buy it, um, I'm gonna keep producing it. And if you're not into DVDs, everything's got a VOD option too. Everything's got a streaming option in my relationships with the Savoldi Savmar family at ClassicWrestling.net too. So I just want to reach as many people as possible, and I want to find a organized, logical home for every wrestling not owned by a billionaire. So you don't have to spend an entire week deep diving on YouTube or like digging through the underworld of the internet. I want to make it sleek, presentable, easy to find, and something that you can hold on to and be proud of, because it is our history, and we deserve to celebrate it, because so much of our industry is destroyed. It was
Yeah.
never taped, or it was taped over. All the big matches were on house shows, and they were never designed to be aired, because you got to buy a ticket to see it. So I want to preserve what's out there, keep it out there, and every week we're digging to find more.
So, expanding on that just a little bit more, why don't you just give us that website again and also explain to the fans what they can expect to see as far as the variety of content? Maybe some of you mentioned a few, but some of the different promotions and collections.
Yeah, it's ProWrestlingLibrary.com. There is there's two links to the DVD portion of the library right as soon as you log in. And then if you scroll down, you can see all 600 plus hours of the content you can get on VOD. I consider it the most diverse wrestling library. Maybe not in the world. Maybe independently run. Maybe not owned by a billionaire, but it certainly is up there. Because I do believe no matter what type of fan you are, you'll find something you like. We have the old school. We put out 2 different Von Erich sets. We put out a 3-disc Ric Flair set. We put out a Harley Race, an Andre the Giant, IWA Eddie Einhorn on the first wrestling company that basically tried to expand to national syndication. We are doing a set called The Territories, where we're going to spotlight as many territories as we can and give you the best, the rarest, the most defining, the most iconic. We got 3 discs of Kansas City. We got 3 discs of Memphis. We're working on Detroit right now, and hopefully a lot more to follow. If you're a newer school fan, we've got sets on AJ Styles, on Samoa Joe, on Johnny Gargano. We are finalizing the Young Bucks right now. We've got Lucha Libre. We've got Japanese footage. We've got women's wrestling. We've got independent events as recent as 2025. We've got old school footage, as old as I think maybe the oldest thing on there is maybe 1953, something like that, give or take. So I think you'll find something that you're into, and, we've got, uh, episodic series of, all the stuff I booked in Cleveland where you could see early Johnny Gargano and early, Brody Lee and, Joaquin Wilde and Madison Rayne and, EC3 and Jimmy Jacobs and all the talent that have been through there that I'm so proud of Lee Moriarty, Wardlow, um, so many guys that went Queen Aminata that have gone on to do big things with big companies. Um, I think I want it to be the kind of place you can just get lost in looking around, reading, video descriptions, finding matches you never thought you knew about. Um, and a lot of those TV episodes, like I'm trying to get rich here, 99 cents, you can watch it. $1.99, you can own it. It's very affordable. It's very cost effective. Um, I'm doing my best to be the Arizona iced tea of pro wrestling and keep the prices as they are.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a passion, it's a labor of love, and I'm always looking to add more um avenues to it and more libraries to it because I don't care about exclusivity, I don't care about contracts, I don't care about upfront fees. You don't pay for the hosting. Um I want to make it very attractive for anybody to jump on board with and like, hey, I used to work for XYZ company and they're out of business and the promoter passed away and he left me all this and I don't know what to do with it. Well, here, let's show the next generation of fans what's there because there's such a turnover in the wrestling audience. What's old can always be new again. Um, so with that mentality, I'm able to work with so many people that maybe didn't have a platform or a know-how of the how and the why and how to reach these people. But because I have this built-in audience, hey, I have a number of affiliates that are making several $100s every quarter because people are responding. And like I said, if they keep responding, it's going to keep opening the door for bigger and better.
Yeah. And let's talk about your commentary specifically. You've commentated for so many different promotions, as you stated already. Who are some of the favorite people you've been paired up with as far as commentary goes? 2022, you hit a milestone surpassing over 7,000 matches that you've commentated on. Kind of bring us up to date, maybe where you are now, roughly. And yeah, just kind of tell us all about your commentary and what people can expect that haven't heard you before.
Yeah, we're at about 8,500 now, but um I have very much lost count because I'm so busy. I do not have a chance to log them like I used to. When you go on a 2-week insane clown posse tour, a lot of times you come home and there's a lot of stuff to catch up with, and unfortunately, logging all those matches sometimes takes a back seat. Um, I've been very, very fortunate. I enjoy, as is with the case of the DVDs as well. I'm a storyteller, and I love to paint pictures. I love to, as Jim Ross would say, be the lyrics to the music of what's going on in our business or in a ring. And I'm very fortunate I was able to find something that I was able to embrace so much and I was never a physical guy. I was never an athlete. I was never a gym class standout. But I also had, a lot of anxieties and just, social awkwardness. But I knew in me somewhere I had, the gift to perform and verbally, mentally, was a lot stronger for me than any of the physical. Um, so it's been a great journey. I loved working with Steve Carino in Ring of Honor. Um, that's incredible. I loved working with Aaron McGuire in the PWO Prime Wrestling era that I was booking up in Cleveland. Anybody that is such an opposite of me stylistically, um, I normally find there's a lot of chemistry with, and I think a lot of it is growing up listening to Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan. To me, that's the preeminent A1 announced team ever, and I can't really listen to anybody arguing that. And that's not to take away from JR and the King or Cole and JBL or Tanay and Don West or whoever your favorites are. But that to me is the best of the best. I used to, play with my action figures and I'd commentate the matches. And I would be Gorilla and Bobby. And I would sit in my room alone arguing with myself. And that creates one of two things, a sociopath or someone destined for the wrestling business. Maybe both, depending on how you look at it. But Steve, Aaron, anybody I had a chance to learn from, guys that have done the big boy TV, your Matt Strikers, Kevin Kelly, Jack Corpella, Rich Bocchini, guys like that who, because I'm always thirsty for more. I realized at a certain point that it's going to be hard for me to get advice on the independent level because no one in a locker room with me has done what I do on a level that I hope to do it. They could tell me things about their story, their character, their match, sure. But the little nuances, I learned more from one email to Jim Ross than I would have 5 years on the independents, just because it's an entirely different way of looking at things. And I really appreciate anybody who had a chance to take me and kind of prop me up, whether they realized they were doing it or not. Mark Madden is a great guy that I worked with. Here in Pittsburgh, he's still doing the radio every day and doing sports talk. D'Lo Brown, I go on and on.
Have you ever done anything with Scott Hudson?
Scott Hudson, I've never met Scott, but Scott was one of my talking heads when I did my first original production, Montreal Theory. And I reached out to promoters and figureheads and announcers just to get opinion pieces on, well, what do you think of what happened? And is it possible that there's more than meets the eye? And I left it very open-ended. But Scott was one of the people that was very easy to work with and very open to doing that. And I appreciate that. I've heard some rumblings without getting into more information than I'm probably allowed to divulge. I've heard some rumblings from one of my current homes that there was at least Scott's name being bantered about. So, hey, never say never. Hopefully that'll still happen because I would love to do it. There's so many people that I grew up watching that Cornette, I can't believe I didn't mention Cornette yet, that I had a chance to work with eventually. And it was just such a surreal experience to see my name and hear my voice along with theirs. But I just hope I'm able to do justice and make what I'm doing better and more enhanced than if I wasn't there. So many independent announcers don't take it seriously and they want it to be their stand-up comedy audition, or they want it to be, let me pop my friends in the back, or, they don't really study it or understand the nuance of it, and the details of it. And I never wanted to be a guy impersonating what I heard on TV. I always wanted to have, elements of everybody, but still be able to have my own distinct style and do my own thing and kind of understand the layers that go into it. And hopefully I've done a decent job.
Now, when you're nearing almost 10,000 matches as far as commentary goes, dare I say, would you be able to pick 3 favorites over the span of your career if you had to?
I mean, I always equate that to, that's like asking somebody their favorite child and they have 8,000 kids.
Right.
I mean, a few stand out for, professional or personal reasons. I think to some of what I did in AAA. I mean, obviously, working with like Iho David Kingo versus Kenny Omega, matches like that stand out. Some of the stuff I did in Ring of Honor, I was a big fan of the rivalry with the men now known as Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn. The tag team division was on fire. The Briscoes, Jay and Mark versus Chris Hero and Claudio. Shelley and Sabin were there too. There was such a, I think the Bucks were in and out. Such a stacked tag division there. Um, Obviously, a lot of the Gargano stuff is close to my heart, especially the early stuff I did with him. I've known Johnny since he was 19, and I always knew there was something different about him. And I didn't know, but I hoped and I watched. And I won't say he overexceeded my expectations because I knew he had a better shot than most, but the path he took was a lot cleaner and smoother than most people, and that's testament to his work ethic. Um, God, there's so much else. I mean, you wouldn't look at them as far as match quality in the year that they happened, but it was such a thrill for me to be able to do Legends matches like Rock and Roll Express versus Powers of Pain, and call Demolition, and call Coco Beware, and all these guys. And obviously that's a completely different style and different approach that I would have to take compared to doing a Kenny Omega match or something like that, or an AJ
Sure.
Styles. Um, I can tell you my first favorite match that was my favorite match for many, many years was AJ Styles and Matt Hardy. Um,
Ah.
because that was about the closest thing the business got to an interpromotional match at the time.
Hmm.
Because that was right when Matt Hardy, he'd gotten fired from WWE, and
Right.
he came back and he was attacking Edge in the crowd, and AJ was one of the top 3 baby faces in TNA at that point. So it felt like it was a part of something truly special, you know. And I did one PW in England, which I got to call AJ and Abyss. I got to call an AJ Samoa Joe Christopher Daniels rematch from the pay-per-view match they had. And work with Christian and work with Jarrett, and Lance Storm versus Doug Williams. I mean, I could go on and on. There's just so many, but you kind of know when you're sitting there. You can feel it.
Hmm.
I'm always in the moment, and it's always weird for me when like talent will get to the back and they're like, "Hey, how's my match?" Or like, "Hey, how did it look when I did the moonsault into the triple Indy into the splash?" And I don't know. Like, you memorized your match. I didn't. I saw it once 4 hours ago, and a lot of other stuff happened. So in the moment, to me, everything's great because it has to be. I'm not there thinking like, wow, that was only 2.5 stars. I can't do that. I'm focusing on what my partner's saying, what's on my monitor, what's on my notes. If there's someone in my ear, there's a lot of traffic. Um, so no, I'm not watching your match like that. But if it's really, really good, or if it's really, really bad, you'll feel it either way.
Yeah.
And I've had dozens of moments like that.
And you mentioned from a commentating standpoint, you looked up to obviously Gorilla and Bobby. Did you have the opportunity to meet them either as a fan or when you got in the business meeting Bobby Heenan?
I met Bobby at the first WrestleCon. I was there selling Montreal Theory. All goes full circle. That was my first time really at a convention. I don't even know how prevalent they were back then. This is when the whole WrestleMania weekend of events thing was really just starting to ramp up into somewhat resembling what it is now. But it was, it was in New Jersey that year, so it was close enough for me. 5 6 hour drive, I think. So hey, let's go promote ourselves. I went with a friend of mine who had helped me work on a lot of the camera and tech stuff back then when I was still learning, and Bobby was one of the guests, and I had a chance to go over and shake his hand and thank him for everything he did. And he was obviously not in great health at that point, and talking for him was very difficult. His wife Cindy was there to like help translate and help communicate and kind of mediate. And it had been a long day, so Bobby had communicated a lot, but he was asking me questions like who I work for. He's doing shtick with me, um, just being the typical Bobby Heenan ham. I think I'm like, thank you for what you've done. And he was like, me? No, 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 no. And he's like hamming it up like I'm accusing him of something like terrible that his character would do.
Right.
Um, and that's such a cool memory. Like I'm not a, and I guess I'm softening on this now, but I was always, brought up of the belief of, don't take pictures with people. And I get it's a different world now because of social media, but at the same time, there's that part of me that's old school, and it's like, yeah, I want to take the picture, but I want it to mean something. I want to be a peer in your eyes first. I don't want to just have that be the first impression. So I didn't get a picture with Bobby, but the memory means more to me than anything, you know. And I wish I could have met Gorilla. Um, you know, he passed in '99, and I didn't get in the business officially till '03. So the timeline didn't work out. I would have loved to have sat down and talked to Okerlund. We were at several of the same conventions, but it was one of those situations where if I'm free and I'm kind of walking around and somebody's got a line or somebody, I'm not going to go impose, and, you know, they got to make their money, do their business. I don't want to be that guy. But it's cool that one of my affiliates now at ProWrestlingLibrary.com is Todd Okerlund, his son, and a lot of his footage has made its way into you know, a lot of my projects, and I've been very fortunate enough through these creations. You know, some of the features that Todd would produce that Gene used to host. Now when he puts stuff out through you know, it's usually collaborative with Todd and with Savmar Savoldis and with myself now. You know, sometimes I get selected to do that hosting job, and I get to, you know, on behalf of the iconic Mean Gene Okerlund, I'm Joe Dombrowski. Welcome to the show. And that's an honor, you know, like no one can fill Gene's shoes. Nobody ever. Not possible. He had such a unique style to him and delivery to him. But to even be in that same stratosphere is an honor. Hey, Shivani, that's another guy I should have brought up. Shivani and Tony Schiavone and David Crockett, I worked with at Ric Flair's last match, and that was a absolute pleasure and a blessing. And I just remember watching David Crockett watch Lucha was my favorite part that night, because you had Bandito and Ray Phoenix and like all the best of the best luchadors, and just watching David Crockett's eyes get bigger and his jaw drop more during that whole AAA match we called was a great pleasure. But yeah, so many guys I grew up with that I'm very, very fortunate have been involved in some way in my journey.
And, you know, you've worked for so many different promotions. I'm going to bring up a few of them. And if you can just kind of throw an antidote out there, you know, maybe your experience there or your involvement with that company. AAA, Lucha Libre Worldwide, obviously Ring of Honor, and CZW, Combat Zone Wrestling.
Yeah. So AAA was one of those examples I always give people where you have to make yourself available and you have to put yourself out there. Because the way I wound up in AAA makes no logical sense, but it happened. AAA I got into through Conan is the one that vouched for me. Obviously, he has a lot of say down there and ran so many of the wrestler operations and the booking. The reason Conan vouched for me is because Kevin Kleinrock was pushing me to Conan and vouching for me. The reason Kevin Kleinrock was vouching for me is because Kevin remembered how well I would put over the luchadors in the very short-lived, failed Extreme Rising promotion that tried to revive ECW. And the only reason I had a chance to work for Extreme Rising is because I rented an entrance set and guardrails to that company when they were coming to Cleveland, where I was booking, and I had that equipment. And the only reason I had access to the guardrails and the set was because I was working with that company, because they weren't even mine. I just made the calls and made the connections.
Right.
So because I rented equipment that didn't belong to me in 2011, now I wind up in AAA in 2019. I love companies like that because it's a challenge. And I know a lot about U.S. wrestling. Obviously, I still have a lot more to learn, but I feel comfortable in my knowledge of U.S. wrestling. I have a lot of blind spots internationally. I was never a regular follower of Mexico, of Japan, of Europe. Obviously, I know the names of the companies and the players and some of the bigger history, but a lot of that's learning on the job. And a lot of that's dealing with language barrier. If somebody's going to cut a promo, or somebody's going to, if there's going to be a package, and if I'm with Vampiro, or if I'm with Hugo Savinovich or somebody that can translate, great. If not, we got to kind of feel around in the dark. But I don't know if I've ever been a part of a bigger presentation than AAA. Even though it's got its critics and it's got its detractors, to be in a baseball stadium with 17,000 fans, to share a broadcast team where the 2/3 of the Spanish side are Carlos Cabrera and Hugo Savinovich. It's wild. It got to a point, they weren't flying me down anymore, and I was doing it remotely. I would sit in this chair and do live AAA from Mexico City,
Oh, wow.
and they would pipe in my audio feed on the Triller TV, and then send it out to the masses. Those are always challenges, because if something happened late breaking in the arena, some change, some added segment, some surprise run in, if Hugo didn't tell me after the production meeting, then I'm winging it. Then I'm Googling it. Then I got my a Lucha Central source on text, like, what's happening? That was always a challenge. And the other problem is just technological. Because if Laredo Kid's on the top rope and here comes the big dive and he's twisted midair and then my screen freezes, well, now what? So I'm at the mercy of a lot of elements that I can't control, and that was a challenge. I wish there was an easier way around, but I'm very grateful and very appreciative of Hugo, of Conan, of Jose Manuel Guillen, and Dorian, everybody down there who opened their arms to me and let me bring a kind of a different flair and a different style to what they did. You said Ring of Honor, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Ring of Honor was validating to me. Ring of Honor was the first truly big company that was like, yeah, we'll give you a shot at this. And I owe a lot of credit to Jimmy Jacobs, because he went to Kerry Silken and Adam Pearce and vouched for me when they needed somebody. And my first run there was 9 months, and then I was kind of, I call it, I was on the Ring of Honor Undertaker schedule. I just come in like once a year, when Kevin Kelly couldn't make it or they just needed somebody. And then I started back up pretty regularly again in late 2018, 17, late 2017, doing Future of Honor and the web exclusives, and I stayed doing that until COVID hit. But yeah, that Ring of Honor is how I learned how to do work in post, because they would very rarely have me at the arenas. I was only at the arenas to do pay-per-views at first. In Toronto for Death Before Dishonor 8, and in New York City for the anniversary. But they would fly me to Bristol, PA. The building that is now Cheeseburger's Worldwide Dojo used to be the Ring of Honor front office. And we'd go there, and I'd sit in a very quiet, empty room with Dave Prazak and our producer, Eric Santa Maria, and in the background, like Shane Hagedorn's answering phones and packing merch orders. And we would have to call very excitedly, because you see how those audiences get, especially in New York, Chicago, Toronto. They're here. And if my voice isn't here, feels off. So I had to manufacture that excitement and put myself in that building. Again, challenging, but it's a skill set I needed, and it's one I use, to this day when MLW or JCW or somebody needs something recorded to insert into the show. But Ring of Honor showed me, like, all right, 7 years in, I'm 24. I got a break like this. I'm doing something right. So very thankful for them. CZW, The good old dub. Um, Took me a while to get in regularly. I would do the WrestleMania shows, or I would do one-offs here and there. But the main part of my regular CCW run, I think, was also 2017 or thereabouts. And it felt like there was a really good renaissance of talent coming through there at that time. That's when you had young MJF, and you had Joey Janela, and the Rascals were first coming up. Desmond Wentz and Trey, and Sammy Callahan, had his finger on a lot of that pulse, and Joe Gacy, who's part of the Wyatt Six now. That they were trying to get away from just being the deathmatch company, and they wanted to be known as more of a well-rounded environment. I think that was one of the reasons they wanted someone like me in there. Worked for a time. I was there for 6 or 8 months, and I think they hit a few stumbling blocks and some hurdles, and kind of wasn't the same after they lost the Flyer Skate Zone building. But my memory of that will always be most notably the first chance I ever worked with at Sushi Onita. They brought Onita in to work with Matt Tremont, and due to some maneuverings and some negotiations behind the scenes, I don't think that match turned out the way the audience hoped. Turned into a 6-man, turned into kind of a, I think a lot of fans described it at the time as underwhelming. But for me, it's just the experience and the ambiance and just the video packages.
Yeah.
Of Matt Tremont calling out Onita. So good, man. Just so good. So yeah, I enjoyed my time there. I know DJ Hyde is not the most likable person in the world. I know that he's got his critics out there, but I will say, to his credit, he never made a promise to me that he didn't live up to. So in that respect, I give him props for that. And again, enjoyed my time there. I don't have a lot of dirt or tea to spill. I try to only gravitate to the stuff I enjoy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Positive is the way I like to keep it anyway. So that works for me. And as a New Englander, I have to ask. Obviously you're obtaining all of these different libraries. Have you ever heard any rumblings about Killer Kowalski's IWF or Tony Rumble's Century Wrestling Alliance or the early days of NWA New England? Do those libraries exist? Have you heard anything about that?
Well, I know that Steve Perkins has been rolling out a lot of old footage from the New England area on the Big Time Wrestling YouTube, and I'm not sure specifically what he has. I know that I'll nudge him from time to time, like, hey, you ever need another home? You need to do anything, I'm your guy.
Yeah.
But it feels like he's been around forever, and he's done so much. But so if there's something out there that it still exists, I would bet he's probably either got his hands on it or have a lead on it. And if he doesn't, then hopefully I'll find it at some point. I'm still kind of digging through so much that is prevalent and well known that is either not organized or missing in so many pockets. You think about St. Louis, Kansas City, Memphis, all of these heavy hitters in the territory era, and then we've been doing a lot with Dennis Coraluzzo content from NWA New Jersey, things of that nature. I think we have over 100 shows of Coraluzzo that are like in the queue. Just the problem is, most of them don't have commentary. A number of them are one camera shoots, so they need time, attention, and love to be the best versions of themselves. So it's another one of those long-standing works in progress. But I would love to open up the vault more of things I haven't seen and are unaware of regionally. And all comes down to finding that right person. There's some grandmother somewhere up there that's got all these tapes in her attic and doesn't know what they are or why, but she'll clean it out one day, and we'll have a whole new treasure trove of wrestling that we can hopefully all enjoy together.
Exactly. Well, let's talk about your time with MLW and any interactions so far that you've had with the ring announcer Rich Palladino. There, a good friend of the show.
Oh, Rich is great. He's a sweetheart. Somebody, you got to appreciate somebody who has been around as long as he has, and you can tell just within 15 seconds of meeting him that he's grounded, he's level-headed, the business hasn't changed him at all. You know, I'm willing to bet he's the same guy that people knew, whenever they broke in and met him.
Yeah.
And very talented, and it's funny going back and watching, whether it's ECW in my personal collection or whether it's some of the Coraluzzo shows, looking back and seeing Palladino. I was voicing the first ever Eddie Gilbert memorial show that Coraluzzo put out, and we're releasing that, I think, some point in the next 2 months. The two ring announcers were Rich Palladino and a young teenager named Dave Prazak.
Ah,
And and to see how much I've worked with both since then. I went up to Rich and I'm like, heck, you wouldn't have guessed it, but even though I broke in 2003, technically we worked a show together in 1995. How about that?
right.
That's the magic of videotape. But yeah, Rich is great, and I'm thankful that MLW settled into one specific ring announcer instead of having different localized ring announcers. It's helped the product be more um, seamless and uniform, and just have its own distinct voice and feel. And Rich does an exceptional job.
Yeah. So let's talk about JCW, Juggalo Championship Wrestling, your involvement there. I feel like they're, with Russo on board and everything that they have going on, it seems to be hotter than ever and everybody's talking about it. So, but let's hear your involvement over the years.
It's an adventure, man. I'm just so along for the ride of Vince Russo. And again, polarizing guy, and I grew up with the Vince Russo formula. I grew up watching Vince Russo television. I was 12 years old when he first started to get a significant influence. So, um, there are things that Vince will try to explain to me as far as how he presents television or what his mindset is, and I'm right there with him because I've seen it for 25 years, um, and I'm not a Russo apologist. There's a lot of things that I would be very critical of, but the thing about Vince is he doesn't shy away from that. Vince has told me. If you have an opinion, share it. Yeah, bro, if you think I killed WCW, I want you to go out there and say I killed WCW. He's you're not going to offend me. So I appreciate that. Like in that respect, he's easy to work with. I understand what he wants, and I understand where he's going. Is it going to be everybody's cup of tea? Probably not. But the thing I can say about Vince, and no matter what your opinion on Vince Russo, I think you can agree with this. When you watch a show that he is got his pen to, it's never boring.
No,
That's for
no.
sure. It's never boring. And I got to shout out JCW and Violent J and Rudy and everybody behind the scenes because they've taken incredible care of me. JCW is another company that I think has tried to kind of expand and change its reputation. Because for a lot of people, their definition of JCW is limited to what they saw as a kid. I when I was a kid, I bought Stranglemania and I bought Juggalo Champion Shit Wrestling when it was called that, and I watched it. I got it. I understood what they were doing. I was like, all right, not for me. Just the way they did the commentary and how crass it was and how over the top it was and how um at least on a surface level insulting some of it came off to some of the talents. It's like this is just weird. um And I think if you're an ICP fan, if you're a Juggalo, or if you are somebody that really embraced the counterculture and was, XPW or whatever you were into, I think those kind of fans were like, yeah, this is my stuff. Or
Yeah.
if you just happen to be in that kind of humor, I'm not judging anybody if they are. But I think a lot of the purist fans and the traditional fans, which I gravitated more towards, were like, oh, what is this? Um, but that is not defining of what JCW is in 2026, because we have incredible in-ring talents. We've got Caleb Conley, we've got Kerry Morton, we've got high flyers like Ninja Mac and Facade and Matt Cross. We've got behemoths like Congo Kong. We've got great women's talents like Haley J and Alice Crowley and Danny Moe. Um, Violent J has always had a passion for pro wrestling. And even though he has this very, very loyal section of fans, these juggalos, it never really got the respect that it eventually earned in, traditional wrestling circles. Um, Terry Funk's a former JCW champion, Sabu. I think, don't quote me on this, but somebody, I think it might have been Roddy Piper, but some massive legend had their last match at a JCW show years ago, Um, that respect really has motivated Violent J to make sure he has a chance to show wrestling fans like, look, this is what we're doing now, and it's pretty badass. And I came on board October 2024, and I think a big reason for that was, they could put me next to Zach Amico, who is a wrestling manager and stand-up comedian who will paint his entire face and spike his hair and just be very, very extra, as the kids say. And he speaks that juggalo language. He speaks to that audience. He will be over the top. He will be more profane. He'll be a little more vulgar in his humor. And I think I'm the guy that's going to take a wrestling fan, grab him by the hand, and say, hey, come on in. We're not going to hurt you. It's okay to like this. We're cool. And I think that's helped with those numbers. And I think Russo is going to take it to an even bigger stretch because he's so polarizing. And whether you like him or you hate him, you're curious. Are you going to watch it because you miss how wrestling felt when you were a kid? Are you going to watch it because you're the type to slow down and stare at the car crash wreckage? Maybe both. I don't know. But that's for the future to decide. But I am along for this ride, and there have been some genuine moments where I was like, holy shit, that was really freaking good. Can it sustain? Time will tell, and the audience will tell us with their eyeballs and their clicks. But I'm excited to see where things are going, and I'm excited to see what the future holds because, like I said, I'm just so entertained by this entire process. And God, I to work with Vince Russo, um, I don't know if it was on my bucket list, but I don't think I thought it was possible enough to put on my bucket list,
Sure.
with how much he's been out of it. But it's a cool experience. It's always wild to check my inbox. And occasionally I'll have an email from both Vince Russo and Jim Cornette for completely unrelated reasons. I'm like, what is my life right now that I'm balancing this? And
Right.
like 12-year-old me would not understand this at all. But I'm just lucky to be here.
So, let's talk about some of the other promotions that you work for briefly. If you could just, same thing, give a little antidote. TNA Impact Wrestling, obviously, Border City Wrestling out of Canada, of course, and the NWA.
So the NWA was it was pre Billy Corgan. It was pre their resurgence. They were running house shows, and they were doing some. I think it was Niles, Ohio, Akron, Ohio, somewhere in Ohio. They were doing a house show, and they needed a ring announcer. And me, being the networking machine that I was, I just figured out who to reach out to and make that happen. And it was just 1 or 2 days, but I enjoyed it. I think I think Phil Shatter was their national champion at the time, who went on to become Gunner. in TNA. Shannon Moore was in the main event. I remember being excited about that. I was a big 3 Count fan as a kid. And I like ring announcing. I don't get to do it as much as commentary, but to me, it's fun in a completely different way because you have your audience is in front of you rather than on the other side of the camera or the microphone.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience. TNA was another ring announcing experience that was a one-off. Jeremy Borash was attending Gail Kim's, or not Gail, or yeah, is Gail Kim the one married to the chef Ted Irvine, or not?
Yes.
What's the name of the chef?
I don't remember, but you are correct, though.
Yeah, he was receiving some kind of an award, and Jeremy was there, and I just happened to reach out to Bob Ryder, like, "Hey, you're in Rostrey Rice Gardens. That's an hour from home. Do you need anything?" And Bob's like, "Well, we could use a ring announcer." And I'm like, there's no possible way this worked out that well. I'm expecting they're going to send me posters to hang up, or like,
Right.
hey, can you give us some names for ring crew? Or I'm expecting that. I don't expect we need you to ring announce. But Bob was familiar with my work. Bob used to watch my old TV show, the PWO Prime Wrestling stuff in Cleveland. He watched on satellite in Nashville. We were on a premium sports package, and I used to hear from some people. He would show some clips around the office from time to time. And actually, when Johnny Gargano got a tryout there in 08, 09, something like that, it was indirectly because he watched the programming. But yeah, loved getting to do that because again, it's more validation. Because keep in mind, when I broke in, WWE wasn't hiring wrestling announcers; they're hiring sports announcers out of college and teaching them what wrestling was. I think there was like a 10-year gap where they didn't hire any wrestling announcers. Kevin Kelly in 96, Joey Styles in 05. There were no wrestling people between then. It was all, college graduates and ex-wrestlers. So when I broke in, WWE, it's always a goal. You always hope, you always want. But realistically, that wasn't the goal. TNA was the highest I could go. So I always wanted to go there. And the fact I was able to do it once, and my boy Joaquin Wild, DJZ, was there, and I've known him when he started training at 16. I was 17, so we basically grew up together in the
Wow.
business. So to be there with him was cool. To be reunited with guys that I'd worked with, like Abyss or EC3, and work with so many new talents. So cool, and a building like that, the Ice Gardens, that has such history. It was a regular ECW stop. But yeah, EC3 and Matt Hardy was the main event that night. Tommy Dreamer and Bobby Roode in a chain match. Abyss teamed with TJP against the American Wolves. Awesome Kong versus Madison Rain. Brian and Earl Hebner were the refs. I remember so much about Bob Rosen was ringside with me. I remember so much about that, man. And Border City Wrestling is right in that same category because me wanting to be a TNA guy. Scott D'Amore ran Border City, and we started talking because I was making waves, offering post-production work and offering, like, I had connections. If you need your show shot and put on iPay-per-view, I can give you the guy. If you need voiceovers later, I can give you me. I was trying to again diversify myself, put myself out there, like, hey, you need something, anything, I can give you something. Maybe you don't want me, but you want this guy over here. We started talking over that, and then he needed a guy. Maybe that was when Art Ocal got signed to WWE, or maybe he was doing some hockey stuff. I don't really know. But me and Matt Stryker did New Japan Pro Wrestling versus Border City Wrestling. And then I came back 6 months later and worked with Shane Douglas. And again, just validating, career defining, like, to get Scott's respect. When you know what a power player he is when you're just breaking in, it's like, wow, Scott D'Amore ever gave me the time of day, or like could listen to my work, or could give me feedback. How crazy would that be? I think it's important for all the young talent that are watching this to think about, is to not lose sight of where you came from. Because I think there's such a propensity to be caught up in the rat race that you get numb to it, or you just get bitter or you get tired, because this business it takes its toll. It is an abusive relationship by definition, and you got to get your heart broken a lot. But so many people lose sight of the fact, like, this is my dream, man. And I'll have guys text me sometimes, say, "Man, I'm so bummed out. I need to get signed." Nah, man. You need to work to get signed, but you need to enjoy the here and the now while you do it. And so many people put so much pressure on themselves, they don't. And it's like, imagine if I could go back and tell 12-year-old me, 6-year-old me, like, well, what's happened? Who I've worked with? Like, oh, are you in WWE? No. Are you in WCW? Well, I got even worse news about that one. That's not possible. But you're gonna work with, a litany. You're gonna meet Bobby Heenan. You're gonna work with, when I'm watching TNA as a teenager. Like, one day you will work with Jeff Jarrett. You'll work with Vince Russo. You'll work with Scott D'Amore. You'll work with Jim Cornette. You cross them all off the list. It's staggering to think about. Like, when I did my first show, I thought, man, I did it. I lived my dream. If this is it, I can still say I did it. No one can take this away from me.
Sure.
And now sitting here, whatever, 1,000 shows later, 8,000 matches later, whatever we're on, still going, still hungry, still passionate. And it's like, there's nowhere else I'd rather be. And talent watching this, just stop and give yourself those flowers, man. Because there's the little kid version of you, is, whether he's in your heart or in the back of your head, or he's in you somewhere, he still exists. And he's proud as hell of you. And you need to appreciate those moments, because I can't tell you how many people I look at, if I find like somebody I graduated high school with on Facebook or somebody like that, and I'm just like, is that where you wanted to be? Like, you had a kid at what age? You gave up at one point? Like, you just settled for, and some people just want to start a family. Some people just want to be a homebody, and I'm not knocking that. But I do know there's a lot of people out there that had big dreams. And at some point, they decided to give up on them and leave them in the past. And maybe that's by necessity, or maybe it's because you just didn't take the time to believe in yourself and figure out how to go that extra step. And the fact that anybody's in the business now that's watching this, you did that, and you should be proud of yourself.
And that's a great piece of advice for somebody that's up and coming, somebody that's looking to get into the business. What would you say is the best piece of advice that you have received personally within the industry?
Ooh. I'll tell you my favorite piece of advice, and I did not get it from someone in the business. I got it from a Moody Blues song. But the line is, it is easier to try than to prove it can't be done. And that's the thing I tell people whenever they say, like, well, how am I going to do X, Y, Z? Well, you know what? You're not going to do it tomorrow, because you're on the first rung of the ladder, and where you want to be is at the top of it. So you are not going to make that leap in one stride, but you can work to get to the next step. And it's a process from there. I think a lot of the obvious things are obvious for a reason. They ring true, mouth closed, eyes and ears open. I never wanted to bother with the drama. I never wanted to bother with the high school mentality and the he said, she said. Like, is it making money or getting my name out there? If not, pass. Even when I made $0, I treated this like a business. Because I knew if I didn't, I'm not going to get out of that price range, My first year in wrestling, I think I made $20. But when I got handed that, it was a watershed moment. I remember the promoter going in for the handshake, and there's something in here. What? Doing the little clandestine, like, promoter payoff. I still remember how that felt, But I think the best advice, period, and I'm sure a lot of people gave it to me, and I've given it to a lot of people, is be happy with what you've done, but never be content. because there's always a next. There's always a bigger. There's always a better. And if you're not doing that, it's probably time to get out. And I've lived by that ever since, because I'm always looking for what's going to put myself in either a challenge or a different skill set, or open a new door. Like, we're all connected. Wrestling's one big interwoven spider web. And another one of my favorite pieces, it's not really advice, which is true. Everybody in wrestling is only 2 phone calls away. We're all connected. So everything you do counts. And even if it's the littlest thing, somebody's watching, or they'll see it eventually. So always give it what you got. And hard work will hopefully be rewarded. People notice the grinders. I just gave you like 9 buzz phrases in a row, so you can pick out whichever one you want.
And you're a well-traveled man. Do you have a favorite venue that you've worked out of, throughout your career?
I got to go to ECW Arena, because I've been there for 7 promotions. I don't know, Ring of Honor, CZW, Battleground, Extreme Rising, Velocity Pro Wrestling, MLW, Kevin Kleinrock's Mass Mania. At least 7 different companies I've worked for in ECW Arena. The history, again, I'm a big mark for history. The various buildings I've been in Toronto stand out. Ted Reeve Arena, where I did Ring of Honor, Death Before Dishonor. I remember the Toronto crowd. I remember the Chicago crowd being so loud. Doncaster Dome in England. That was lightning in a bottle. The management was in over their heads from day one, but until it crashed and burned, like 6 different times, I was able to get, a handful of really, really quality experiences there. And that was the first time I was really ringside and surrounded by the people. And there were like 1,500 fans, and they were so starved for American wrestling. They ate everything up. And even though it's not aesthetically great, Turner's Hall in Cleveland, that was the wrestling venue in Cleveland for probably 15, 20 years. And my first wrestling event I ever worked was in Cleveland, was in that building in 2006. And I think the last Cleveland event I've done to this point, no, not true, but one of the last few Cleveland events I've done was in that building in 2021. So it's got a rich history for me. And while I'm at it, I got to shout out the stadiums in Mexico that we did Triple Manias in: Mexico City and Monterrey, and Tijuana. Auditorio Fausto Gutierrez, which is another famous wrestling building in Tijuana, Baja California. The history there, man, just the stadiums will pack 15,000 in. Even if it's a place that seats 20 or 30,000, man, you still feel that energy.
Yeah.
And it's a spectacle. It really is a spectacle, is the best way to put it. And then Auditorio is more of a confined, I don't remember what it was, maybe 6, 8, 10,000 fans, but they're so on top of you and they're so loud. The only time I had money thrown and hit me in the back of the head was at Auditorio Fausto, because they had the tradition of throwing money in the ring, but the ones that couldn't throw their coins as far as they wanted to just hit me in the back of the head. I'm keeping this now. But it's a wild environment. It's not so wild like Puerto Rico where you're in fear of your life, but it just feels very frenetic and like anything can happen, and that's fun. Yeah.
And what could you tell us about, what do you think your greatest challenge has been within the industry thus far in your career?
Oof. In a lot of ways, growing up. I mean, I entered this business in 17 years old, barely 17, very sheltered, very socially anxious, very unconfident, very much in my shell. And that doesn't work too well in a people business, in a networking business. So this business made me challenge all of that in a hurry. I don't like talking to other people, so I'm very nervous when I have to use the phone, especially with people I don't know. Well, when somebody says, "Hey, I need you to do me a favor, please call Samoa Joe and book him for these dates," you don't really have a choice but to get over that fear quickly. And once you've done that, well, a lot of other stuff feels a lot simpler next time you got to make a call to somebody that's not
Yeah.
quite Samoa Joe. Um, it's one of those things where I knew what I was capable of and I knew where I wanted to be, but I didn't know how to express it. And I didn't know how to carry myself. I didn't know how to be comfortable in my own skin yet. And really, fully, I didn't complete that journey until I started doing therapy a few years ago. But at the time, um, I realized that my desire to succeed had to overcome my fear of failure. And I had to, this is your shot. You're in, you're here. If you screw this up, you're going to be mad at yourself for the rest of your entire life. So shut up, stop overthinking, and do what you need to do. And it was a process, years long process. I think to some extent I'm still on that process. Um, I don't know where my life would be without wrestling, because if I stayed local in my town, easy job with no upside, and just was on an assembly line for 40 years, I'd have lived a fine, quiet life, hopefully not bothering anybody, hopefully just doing what I needed to do and getting by. But I wouldn't be put in any of these situations where I was forced to grow and
Yeah.
forced to develop. And I think just the fact that, again, looking back at the progress I've made, looking at how 17-year-old me carried myself versus any year since then you want to pick is more than night and day. And if not for the motivation of like, hey, here's everything you ever wanted, I don't know that I would have been able to overcome that. Or if I did, it would take a hell of a lot longer.
And on the flip side of that challenge, what would you say has been the most rewarding for you within the industry?
Being able to twofold, being able to make fans feel the same way I felt when I was a young fan, being able to help them emotionally connect to their favorites or what the story is or what the match is, um, and just be to them what JR or Monsoon or Lance Russell or whoever was to me. Um, and also watching my heroes become my friends and realizing that once upon a time it was unattainable for me to email somebody, text somebody, and even get the time of day. Not because they're being jerks, but they're busy. They're on the road 200 days a year. I'm this weird kid that's just trying to get their attention. Um, I get it a lot more in hindsight, but to be able to look at someone on TV as a kid just wide-eyed and knowing there's so many of them that if I reached out to them now, maybe they wouldn't respond right away, but some of them would, some of them within a day or two. Like I could count on them to, yeah, what do you need, or what do you need to know, or hey, thanks for sharing that, or whatever. And I wanted that so bad back in the day, where it's like, man, just I'm a Pittsburgh guy. Just going up and talking to Shane Douglas is like an all-week preparation process. Like, what would I say? How would I say it? I don't want to look rehearsed though. What if he laughs at me? What if he says this? What if he shoos me away? But now I can just if he calls me or I call him, I can be the smartass that I am, and he can be the smartass that he is, and no one has to think about it. And that's really cool. Um, and yeah, again, it's a growth process, and it's just an evolution, and it's something I try not to lose track of. And it's like, um, I'm here, and some may say it's because I'm good. Some may say it's because I'm lucky. Some may say it's just because I outwork everybody. Some may say I'm just too dumb to quit. I don't know, but whatever it is, I'm enjoying the ride.
I'd say it's because you're good. I mean, you can't have luck that many times. You know what I mean? You've worked for so many different promotions and you've succeeded, wherever you go. Now, we talked about Bobby and Gorilla, obviously, as your inspiration for commentary. How about the ring announcing side of things? If you could pick, one individual, who was that inspiration for you as a ring announcer in ring?
Mm. Obviously, when I grew up, Howard Finkel was the man. Um, I like to keep my style as like a conglomeration of everybody. I don't like to, you know, and again, it helps in commentary because I'm not going to call the Rock and Roll Express the same way I'm going to call AJ Styles, you know. But I would think there's probably bits of Howard Finkel, Tony Chimmel, Penzer, Capetta, um, Bobby Cruz. Um, Anytime I announced Terry Funk, I always thought about Bob Ortiz and how he
Mm.
did it in ECW.
Yep.
Just those little nuggets, those little Easter eggs that kind of pop into my mind. I try to be, depending on where I am and who I'm announcing, just in that spectrum somewhere. But they all shaped who I am because they're all just ingrained in my head forever, whether I like it or not. I just happen to like all of them.
And was there a favorite to ring announce, even if it was just, the way you're pronouncing the name or presenting that individual? Did you have favorites to announce?
Well, I mean, I just mentioned it, but my favorite was Terry Funk
Yeah.
because I didn't know it at the time, but I was ring announcing his final matches. He came down to the Carolinas for Steve Perkins' Big Time Wrestling, and it was advertised as his final matches in the Carolinas, and it was Terry and it was the Rock and Roll Express versus Brian Christopher, Doug Gilbert, and Jerry Lawler. And I'm a Memphis fan. I'm a Terry Funk fan. I'm in Jim Crockett's old buildings. Like that was my favorite experience as a ring announcer. Um, I got to announce, for AJ, for Jarrett, for Samoa Joe, for all the heavy hitters in the mid 2000s. Um, there's a athlete here in the Pittsburgh area that's put on a lot of miles on the road as well, named Facade, and I always enjoyed announcing him because um, his introduction was a little bit longer. He had a few different nicknames to play with, and normally when I was ring announcing him, he was probably near or close to the top of the card, so I got to put my whole ass chest into it. Those are a few favorites, but really, I just enjoy. I enjoy experimenting with it. Like where am I going to put my inflection? What makes the most sense? Where do I have my peaks and valleys? And just because I'm stubborn, I try to figure out how to do it where the fans aren't going to yell one fall at me.
Right. Yes.
I'll either do I'll either just say it very cavalierly and just move on quickly, or sometimes if it's a crowd that's really into it, I'll do the old Capetta. The following is for the heavyweight championship. It is set for one fall. And so I'm saying it last.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I don't know. I just enjoy experimenting with it, playing around with it, and seeing what sounds better because I don't get to do it that much. I'm not as good as a Bobby Cruz or a Nick Lendl or anybody like that who's out on the scene. But I like to think I can hold my own.
And obviously, you have a love for each and every job that you do. But if you had to pick one aspect of your career, as a favorite or most comfortable, is it the ring announcing? Is it the commentary? Is it the merchandising, the booking? What part of your job would be your favorite?
Booking is so polarizing because it is, when things go well, the most rewarding, and when things go terribly, it is the most soul crushing. So I am happily in an extended detox from booking right now.
Mm-hmm.
I've booked one show since summer of 2021. I'm open to doing it again, but it has to be right circumstances, right promoter, right vision. I've totally unplugged my brain from that aspect of it so much to where even if friends will run ideas by me, or if like a promotion I work for says, "Look over this sheet, let me know if anything feels bad or anything." It's just hard to even get myself wired that way anymore.
Yeah.
It just takes so much out of you. Commentary is the bread and butter. It always has. I'm sure it always will be. Um, I've developed such a love of producing and compiling this old content this past 2 years, and the new content too. To be honest with you, um, I would just miss the road too much. I'd miss the boys too much. Um, it'd be great to be home every day of the year, but it would get very monotonous quickly.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I'm not home enough where I feel that. I kind of am now because I had a 10-day tour scheduled that was cut down to 2 days. Um, which that 10-day tour would have turned into a 14-day tour because I would have been home for about 3 hours and then back on the road down to Orlando. But thankfully I've got this little 7-8 day gap here. I can just work on projects around the house, and then I know I got something to jump right back into coming up this coming week. So um, commentary is where I feel most at home, and I feel like in some respect it's always been there, and the ability to collaborate with talent and the ability to help talent in some way discover themselves. I don't think the average training school spends nearly enough time on character development or promos because I get a lot of unfinished product. I get guys and girls who, oh, I've only been working 9 months. Oh, cool. Tell me about yourself. Who are you? What's your character? What motivates you? I get the deer in headlights look. And they'll be like, nobody's ever asked me that before. And my first thought is, well, why not? What's the other play-by-play guy in the other companies you work for doing? What story are you telling, and how do you want the audience to ingest you if you can't answer the basic questions of who and what your presentation is?
Yeah.
But asking those questions and letting them think about it, and they'll come back to me a month later like, "Hey, here's an idea I had." That's really rewarding. I really love working, and maybe part of it was just how um, intimidated I was when I started, but it's really fulfilling to me to find that kid who maybe is unsure of themselves or unsure of what to do, or wants this badly, you can tell, but maybe lacks a lot of confidence or just lacks the knowledge of how to navigate the system. I find myself gravitating to those people, and I don't know if it's just a symbiotic mental thing. I don't know if it's just me sensing something in them that I would sense in myself back in the day. I don't know what it is, but there's a lot of people I can point to that I was able to, hopefully make feel a little more confident about their work and think about things a little more deeply to prepare them for um, whatever their next level is, whether it's main eventing their local company or whether it's getting a contract or whether it's going to Japan, whatever it is. I want, my job on air is to make you sound better than you are and make the story more compelling. And hopefully my job behind the scenes is everything I feed you and ask you and talk to you about will make you think about yourself in a way that you never had to before. That doesn't come up when you're thinking about a 6 to 8 minute match, but it does come up when it comes down to, well, I need to talk about you for 6 to 8 minutes, so I
Yeah.
need some depth to who and what you are. So let's think about it.
And I know it's cliche, and there's a million ways to look at it. Personal favorite, or who made the greatest impact. But if you had to pick a Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, any era, what would that be in your eyes?
Through my eyes?
Yeah.
Okay. If we're going through my eyes, then I think it's got to be Ric Flair's got to be on it. Terry Funk's got to be on it. I'll have AJ on it to represent the more common era, or more modern era, I should say. And if it's my eyes and I'm an announcer, I got to put Jim Ross on it. That's my personal Mount Rushmore. That may be Flair was my first favorite. Terry Funk's my favorite now. AJ I looked up to so much as a talent when I got in the business, and I was so fortunate to, like, my first 3 years, like, that was my holy grail. Like, oh man, AJ's coming in. I just watched him on pay-per-view on Wednesday, and now I'm in a locker room with him Saturday. That makes no sense. What am I doing?
Yeah.
But I was such a fan of his work, and he was so instrumental in being a face for that modern style. And JR to me is the best to ever do it behind a mic. All due respect to Lance, to Gordon, to Cole, to everybody that's come before or since. But if there's one person who has inspired my work the most, it's Jim Ross. So those are the 4 people that maybe are most impactful to me personally as a fan and spectator.
I want to give us a rundown one more time for the fans, where fans can follow you, all your socials, your websites, and where they can land.
Yeah, ProWrestlingLibrary.com has all the DVD and VOD content. You can also go to joe-dombrowski.com. It is my personal website. There is all the DVD links are there as well, but you can also find match logs and bios and stuff like that, and things I put up there when I had control of my life enough to update websites. You can find me on pretty much any major social media platform. All the links are on the top right of the screen on ProWrestlingLibrary.com. So that can get you to Facebook, to X, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, and Threads, which a lot of the content overlaps, but, once in a while I'll answer some questions or post some exclusive things in one or the other. But yeah, I love interacting with people. And I love hearing what you guys like, what you guys are into, what you guys are supporting, what you guys want to see more of. So, I'll post preview clips and trailers of a lot of the classic stuff I'm doing, and a lot of the releases. I will post events and posters and graphics and highlights from the modern shows I'm doing the play-by-play on now. So you get a little bit of everything on there. But it's, to me, if you're a wrestling guy, like I said, you'll find something you'll like, and you'll probably find a lot that'll be very intriguing to learn about as well. So I appreciate the support. Anybody that wants to visit, follow along, be a part of it. I always say, support what you like, prop up what you like, ignore what you don't. Don't give in to the algorithm, and vote with your time and vote with your dollar. That's the best way that you can help the type of wrestling that you're into. And if it happens to be something I'm doing, I will do my best to serve you.
And as we finish up here, I've got 2 more quick questions for you. If you could pick one moment, all of your accomplishments that you've had so far, but that one moment that just means the most to you thus far in your career, whether it be behind the scenes or on screen or wherever it may be.
I made sure to stop and smell the flowers behind the curtain at TNA. And it's like 15 minutes before we were going out. Nobody was bothering me. Everybody was doing their thing. And I was just in my own head, and just like 10 years, well, almost 12 years of work at that point. Like this means so much. Similar for Ring of Honor, similar for AAA, similar for MLW. All in their own ways. AAA was being able to show I can do this on an international market. Ring of Honor was showing I could do this on a big scale. TNA was showing I could do this on the company that I always hoped I could wind up in. MLW was a chance to show I could do this episodically, week to week, and be the voice of a company for a long period of time. Those benchmarks mean the most to me because you always hear it. There's a 99% chance you won't make it, and this is a hobby, not a job. And for every one that makes it, there's a thousand more that are dreaming, or whatever the case is. So the fact that I believed in myself, maybe before anybody else did, or certainly before I had a chance to show people why they should. And I was right. I bet on myself, and I was right. I don't think it's good advice to tell people not to go to college. I think that's a personal issue. Follow your heart, follow your money status, whatever. I'm not telling anybody what to do, but I decided it wasn't for me. I decided I could learn in the field. I decided that I could bet on myself and still make this work. And I was right. Would I have gone further with a college degree? Would I have more money now? I have no idea. But that's a big risk when you don't have the money to play with. And money is power in America, whether you like it or not. That's just the society we live in. And not being in college debt enabled me to do a lot more risks in making something of myself in wrestling, whether it's making a product, whether it's traveling somewhere, whether it's making a financial sacrifice to put my name out there, whatever it is. So those benchmarks mean the most to me because I've always looked at it as a career, and that's career validation. That's promotion. That's, hey, you're headed up to the big office. So I look at that as so special, and hopefully more to come.
And in closing, obviously you're still very active in the pro wrestling world, and you still have a lot to give to wrestling. But fast forward many years from now, looking back at your career as a whole, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as somebody who was able to showcase his passion for this and his love for this in a way that made other people feel that same passion and love. I want to be able to give attention and credit to the parts of the business that may have been forgotten to time or may have not been readily available. I want to be someone who helped enhance every product I worked with, independent, national, international, whatever it is. Just someone who put their heart and soul into this in every single hat I had to wear, every single hat I was fortunate enough to wear. I'll word that properly. And hopefully left the business and especially the key components that I perform within much better and much more vibrant than I found it.
Well, Joe, thank you for all of your contributions in the wrestling world. And, we thank you so much for taking the time being here today. Really enjoyed this chat. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for putting up with my rambling and all of my stream of consciousness thoughts. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. And I hope you guys keep supporting pro wrestling because without you, there is no us.
Absolutely. For Joe Dombrowski, I'm Joseph Bruen. This is the All Access Entertainment Podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave your comments. Love to hear from you, the fans, what you thought of this episode and what you'd like to see in the future. And as always,